I curled up on the sofa with a pillow for 2 years, but on our wedding anniversary, I saw my wife wrapped in a bath towel opening the door for the male assistant. Not only did they occupy my wedding bed to discuss projects, they also asked me to help order midnight snacks. When I emptied the closet and prepared to leave, my wife mocked me for going back to my parents' home to complain. At this moment, I held the 300 intimate photos on my tablet and finally threw the divorce agreement in her and her lover's faces. Alisane and I had been married for 2 years, and we had always slept in the same bed, never apart. That night, she was wearing a delicate lace nightgown, and I had a vague feeling that maybe this night would be different. Maybe, after all this time together, our relationship would improve. However, things did not go as I expected. She opened the front door and let her young assistant, Mike Kohler, in. She smiled and said to me, "Mike and I have work to do tonight." I noticed that Mike gave me a meaningful smile. They entered the master bedroom, and soon, low laughter and ambiguous whispers came through the wall, like a sharp knife, cutting my heart. I knocked on the door and handed her a pillow. "Why don't you two sleep together?" Alice's face suddenly turned ugly. "What are you thinking? We are just working. If there was anything, we would have gone to the hotel long ago." But her hair was disheveled and there were faint marks on her neck, all of which gave the truth away. Strangely, I didn't feel angry or sad, but a strange calm. I looked into her eyes, and those once beautiful eyes were now cold and strange. "Let's get a divorce." Her expression changed from surprise to mockery, and she threw the pillow at my face with a sneer. "Are you trying to do this again? Are you trying to threaten me with divorce again? If you have nothing to do, just go to sleep and don't disturb me while I'm working." Mike sat on the bed and looked at me as if I was laughing at a joke. I took out my phone and took a picture of their smug expressions. Before Alice could react, I turned around and closed the door. I sent the photo to her parents with a message. "I'm so sorry, Alice, and I really can't go on." A few minutes later, her phone rang. I heard her calmly explain, "Adam is just having a tantrum. Do you want me to work in a cafe with my subordinates at this late hour?" 2 minutes later, she stormed out, her eyes full of anger. "Adam, are you crazy? You're going to complain to my parents about this little thing? I'm working, not like you, who do nothing all day. Can't you understand?" I looked at her and said nothing. She scoffed and turned back to Mike, and their laughter started again. I sighed, no longer having the energy to argue. I took out my suitcase and started packing. Alice and I have known each other since childhood and have been together for more than 20 years. Our marriage was only formed because of her parents' coercion. I still remember the day she suddenly turned to me with a smile on her face and said, "Why don't we try to settle down and forget the past?" At that moment, my heart beat faster. I naively thought that marriage could bring us happiness, but I was wrong. On our wedding night, she looked at me and said, "Adam, I know you too well to interest me. Let's sleep in separate rooms, okay?" I didn't want to force her, so I agreed. 2 years passed, and we lived under the same roof like strangers. Her indifference became more and more biting, as if I had done something wrong. 3 months ago, her company hired Mike as an assistant. He was young, handsome, and brought new color to her life. She began to laugh out loud, but only at him. As for me, she only resented. One night, she suddenly said coldly, "Adam, why did you marry me in the first place? You were really boring. Do you know that?" I used to blame myself, thinking I wasn't doing enough, so I tolerated her, forgave her, and gave her space. But her behavior kept getting worse. The furtive glances, the flirtatious conversations, the flirting, it was all escalating. Tonight, she had the audacity to bring him into our bedroom. I stuffed my luggage into the suitcase and listened to their laughter coming from the master bedroom. Then, without hesitation, I opened the door and walked out. The next morning, my phone rang. Alice's voice came through, casual and indifferent. "Adam, you're not home?" I was lying on my bed in my old home, half asleep and half awake. "You didn't even make breakfast. Where the hell have you been? Mike and I are starving, you know that?" Her tone made me freeze for a few seconds. She didn't even notice that I had moved out. I wasn't in the mood to ask her what she did last night. I didn't care anymore. I said calmly, "I have no obligation to cook for you, Alice. This marriage is over, and I'm going to get a divorce today." She suddenly fell silent on the other end of the phone, and then asked coldly, "Are you serious? Are you really going to do this? I am your only relative, and you want to divorce me?" Her words were like a knife stabbing into my heart. 6 months ago, my parents had died in a landslide while traveling. Alice knew that this was the most painful memory of my life, but she still used it to attack me. I am speechless. After a while, her tone softened a little. "Sorry, I'm a little excited. Tomorrow is the weekend. Let's go to the resort and I'll take you to the hot springs." I suggested going to a resort several times in the hope of bringing us closer, but each time she declined, saying she was too busy with work. Now, she's suddenly willing to go? Unfortunately, it's too late. No need. I rejected her flatly. She was silent for a moment, then her tone softened. "Last night, Mike and I were really just working. Adam, we've been childhood sweethearts for more than 20 years. Don't you believe me? How could I trust her? The scandal between her and Mike didn't just start last night. It started months ago. I still remember the night I first discovered their relationship. Alice was taking a shower when her phone rang. It was a video call from someone labeled brother. I thought it was her relative and instinctively answered the phone, but Mike appeared on the screen with his upper body naked. As soon as he saw me, he hung up the phone. I sat there, confused and upset. When Alice came out of the bathroom, I told her what had happened. Her reaction was violent. "Adam, who told you to touch my phone? Do you have any manners?" I was stunned but quickly apologized. Then she explained, "Mike rents a roommate's apartment and there's no air conditioning, so he didn't have a shirt on. He called about work." I naively believed her and thought it was just a misunderstanding, but I didn't expect that this was just the beginning. From that day on, Mike became an integral part of our lives. She would always think of his name, spend hours texting and calling him, and sometimes even completely ignore me. She even left me behind and went on a week-long trip with him. Every time she uses work as an excuse to treat me like a fool. In the past, I would have tried to win her back and fight for our marriage, but now, she has gone too far. I took a deep breath and told her, "It doesn't matter whether I believe you or not." As soon as I finished speaking, I heard a chuckle from the other end of the line. "Mike." She put my phone on speaker. I had nothing more to say. I hung up without hesitation. A moment later, Alice sent a message. "Now you're hanging up on me? Adam, do you still want to have fun?" I ignored her. Instead, I contacted an attorney and had him prepare divorce papers. This marriage was a mistake. It was time to end it. That night, I received a friend request from Mike. I hesitated for a moment, but finally accepted it. Almost immediately, a message popped up. "Brother-in-law, my sister asked me to live with you. Will you help help me move in? Then came a voice message. Alice's voice was cold and authoritative. Adam, you don't have to come. Go home and prepare the second bedroom for Mike. You can move to the other one. Mike can easily catch a cold and your room can get the morning sun. It's better for him. I stared at my phone in disbelief. I wasn't afraid of the cold, yet she said it as if her decision was final, as if I had no say in my own home. I sneered, cold and sharp, full of anger. I decided to go back to the house we used to live in. I left in such a hurry last night that I forgot some things. I also need to deal with the wedding photos in the master bedroom. Walking into the bedroom, I was shocked by the mess inside. The quilt was scattered on the floor, the sheets were wrinkled, and the single sofa was moved. What made me even more disgusted was that a pair of men's trousers was thrown casually on the sofa. The trash can was full of crumpled tissues. I walked closer and saw a familiar dark box stuffed inside. There was a foul smell in the air, and I immediately felt nauseous, grabbing the wall and retching uncontrollably. Alice, this is what you call a job? What kind of job is this? At that moment, my disappointment with her reached its peak. I took out my phone expressionlessly and recorded it all. Then, I turned to the wedding photo on the wall. In the photo, we were hugging each other and smiling sweetly. Looking back now, this was the only photo we had taken together in the past 2 years. Since then, she even refused to be in the same frame with me. I took it down, tore it into pieces, and threw it into the trash can downstairs along with the frame. On the way back to my hometown, I called my boss and said, "Boss, doesn't the rural branch often need help? Can you send me over?" He sounded surprised. "I thought you didn't want to leave town. Why did you suddenly change your mind? Did you two have a fight?" I forced a smile and said, "Career is more important." My boss agreed to my request. I will be returning home in 2 months. This period of time is enough for Alice and I to complete the divorce procedures. I had just returned to my hometown when Alice called again. "Adam, what do you mean? It's so late. Why are you still fooling around? Mike just moved in, and as the head of the family, is this how you treat your guests? Do you have any manners?" She didn't seem to notice that I had lost my wedding photos or that I had moved away. I didn't bother to point it out, and I just responded, "I'm busy and don't want to disturb your time together. Why are you so rude? Mike's living conditions are very bad and I'm just trying to help him. What do you think?" I hung up the phone before she finished speaking, not wanting to have anything to do with her anymore. I sent the divorce agreement directly to her address. We didn't have any communication for the next 2 days. However, Mike frequently updated his social media, showing his and Alice's intimate daily life. Alice, who had never cooked for me, was wearing an apron and preparing a love breakfast for him. Mike took a picture of her taking a nap, standing next to her and making a playful peace sign for the camera. They even played poker, and when Alice lost, she stripped down to her 2 layers of clothing. It was like they were a real couple, and I was just an outsider, but none of that mattered anymore. I was leaving soon. Still, I silently screenshotted everything. I needed leverage for my divorce. When I was about to get off work, Mike suddenly sent me 3 messages in succession. "Brother-in-law, you saw it too, right? Alice is so nice to me. She agrees to whatever I say. I heard her say that you two never slept together. Is that true? She smelled so good. How did you resist? Are you a eunuch? Will you give her to me? She doesn't love you at all." I decided to go back in. When I opened the door, I saw them right away. Mike was helping Alice do yoga, and she was wearing an extremely revealing dress. "Mr. Wayne, you're finally back. You don't know how lonely she is without you," Mike said meaningfully. I walked over, grabbed him by the collar, and punched him hard in the face. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. His nose and lips were bleeding, and I finally threw him to the ground. Even so, my anger was not quenched. I raised my foot again, ready to kick him. But before I could kick away, I was suddenly hit hard on the back of my head. My vision was blurred and the pain in my skull was unbearable. I turned my head slowly, barely able to make out the scene in front of me. Alice was standing there, holding a small round fish bowl in her hand. There were no fish in it. I bought a few and took good care of them, but she flushed them down the toilet and said they were ugly. Now, she looked at me with cold indifference. "Mike is my brother. I won't let you bully him." She stared at me as if I were her enemy. My head throbbed violently. My mind was blurring and I collapsed onto the couch, barely able to open my eyes. I watched Alice hurriedly help Mike up, her hands gentle and caring. I couldn't hold on any longer. Everything turned black. What about Alice? She helped Mike out the door without looking back. "I'll take you to the hospital. You'll be fine." At that moment, the last bit of pride I had in this marriage completely disappeared. When I woke up, it was already morning. The back of my head was aching, and the sofa was stained dark red from my overnight bleeding. That's when I noticed Alice's tablet forgotten on the table. I hadn't intended to check it out until my screen lit up with a notification showing my lock screen wallpaper. It was an intimate photo of her and Mike. She was wearing next to nothing, and their pose was undeniably provocative. The tablet had no password. I opened the photo album and my stomach churned. Dozens, no, hundreds of photos and videos of their secret moments. Passionate embraces, provocative snapshots. A video in which she called him husband in a voice so sickeningly soft that it made my skin crawl. I copied everything onto my phone and went straight to the hospital. At the door, I saw Alice walking out with Mike's arm around her. She saw me and frowned. "Are you here to apologize to Mike? At least you still have a conscience." I smiled bitterly. "Have you forgotten? It was you who smashed my head open yesterday." Her face turned pale. I'm sorry. I was too anxious just now." But before she could say more, Mike winced in pain and she rushed back to comfort him. At that moment, I was numb all over. "Today is Mike's 22nd birthday," Alice said. "We're celebrating at our house. You'll come, right?" I forced a smile and held the phone tightly. "Of course, I won't miss it."